Good afternoon, Year 10. So it's Monday, and Monday afternoon, and I've updated this information about the test, which I've been talking about for the last few lessons. Hang on, I'm just checking my diary here. So the plan's going to be, we're going to do the test on Thursday. It's going to be in period 4B, which is when our lesson is. It's the same test. It's not been updated, so it doesn't include things that we've been doing so far this term. We're going to set the test at 1, and the test must be uploaded by 3, as we've written here in this information just here. That gives you a 2-hour window, but it is in fact just a 1-hour test. I'm expecting you to spend an hour on it, which will be the time in the lesson. So you don't need to go on to period 5. I've just been a bit easy at the edges with the time to make sure that you can upload it and it's not sort of to the minute of a concern. But but it will be on Thursday. That will be the lesson on Thursday. And when you upload it, I want you to upload it with your name, which is call the file your name. Right, so on with the lesson today. The first thing, of course, is some starter questions that build on what we've been doing, a bit of a refresher, and then we're going to move on to some new stuff. So pause the video here and have a go. I'm going to create some space here. Right, I want to find the area of this triangle, but there's a bit of a problem, which is I don't know what x is. So I won't be able to find the area by doing half AB sine C or half base times height. It is a right angle triangle, so I could use some Pythagoras to build an equation, and that equation is going to be x plus 5 squared plus x minus 2 squared equals 12 squared. And I can just expand all these brackets. And then I can collect the terms. So I've got 2x squared, I've got 6x, and I've got 25, and I've got 4 equals 144. So I need to make it quadratic and make it equal to 0. And that's going to be minus 115. So I could try and do PSF, but the fact that the question says leave your answer in third form is suggesting to me that we won't be able to do it by PSF, because when we have PSF we get whole numbers or fractions. So I'm going to go straight in. I'm going to try completing the square because that's what we've been doing. So I've got x squared plus 3x minus, I'm going to write 115 over 2. So I'm starting off, remember, by dividing the whole thing by 2 because I need a single x squared here at the front. Then I'm going to complete the square. Minus 9 over 4, of course. And I'm going to write that as minus 230 over 4 because it's more convenient for collecting the terms. I'm going to collect those terms. I'm going to add that on. I'm going to square root. I'm going to square the top and bottom separately. And then I'm going to take away that 3 over 2. So you have minus 3 plus or minus the square root of 239 over 2. So x is part of the length of the side. So therefore, x must be equal to minus 3 plus the square root of 239 over 2. It can't be minus because you can't have a negative length. So it says leave your answer in third form. So I'm not going to get my calculator and work out what that is because this is a non-calculator question. So I'm going to do half base times height. And half base times height is going to be area equals, or half the base is minus 3 plus the square root of 239 over 2 minus 2. So that's the base. times the height. Now, it looks really confusing, but I'll go with it. Base times height divided by 2. Right, so we can make this a bit easier by that. We can bring that -2 onto the fraction, and we could actually just effectively cross that out, make it -4 on the top. We do the same thing here, effectively cross that out and just make it +10 on the top, because 10/2 is 5. And then we can group the numbers we've got there. So that's really -7 plus the square root of 239/2. And that's really 7 plus the square root of 239/2 times a half. And actually, you've got a half here and a half there, and that would time together to give a quarter. And then you've got a half on the outside, and that will time together to give an eighth. And I'm going to write these other way around. We've got the square root of 239 minus 7. We've got the square root of 239 plus 7. And that's actually the difference of 2 squares, isn't it? So root 239 times root 239 is, of course, 239. And then we'll have plus 7 root 239 minus 7 root 239, which, of course, we'll just cancel out, minus 49, which will be, well, 239 minus 49 is 190. So we've got 190 divided by 8, which of course is the same as 95/4 units squared. And I wonder if anyone actually did that all without a calculator. If you did, that's very good. I'm very impressed. Well done. Right, so that was a bit challenging, but back to exactly what we were doing last time. I've got 3 questions here. I want to solve these quadratics here. And as you can see by the third form or 3SF, you will need to use completing the square. So pause the video here, have a go at the 3. The last one's a little bit harder, which is why I put it in red. And then play the video and check your answers. Okay, so part A, I'm going to start by completing the square. Usual steps. Right, you can simplify the square root of 27 into root 9 root 3, can't you? So the final answer is going to be -5 plus or minus 3 root 3. Number 2, it's slightly harder because it's got an odd number. Let's convert that 4. All the steps you'll be used to. Add the 33/4, square root, and do the top and bottom separately. And I'm going to finish off by adding that 7/2. And because they've got a common denominator, I'm going to group them like that. Now this question does say 3SF, so I'm going to get my calculator out and type as a fraction in 7 plus the square root of 33/2. And I've got 6.37. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to put the minus in. Easier to just adapt it rather than type it again. And I've got 0.628 to 3SF. There's my 2 answers. And then the third one here, touch more difficult. You've got to firstly get it equal to 0 and then divide through by 2. And we can divide through rather than factorizing because it's an equation. So then we can complete the square. I'll just adapt that 3/2 to 6/4. So that's going to be minus 15/4. I'm going to add it on. I'm going to square root it separately. And I'm going to take away that 3. And it says 3SF, so I'm going to type into my calculator. -3 plus square root of 15/2. And I've got 0.436. And then I'm going to go back and change the plus to a minus. and I've got minus 3.44. And they're my two answers there. Good. And then finally, before we get on to some new stuff, but the new stuff isn't that long, you'll pick it up pretty quick. Remember we did some work on when it's not an equation, so this is not an equation, this is an expression dealing with completing the square on that, where you can't divide by 2 because it is not equal to 0. So pause this here, have a go at this one. So what I did first was I just reordered it. So it's minus 2x squared plus 6x minus 9. So I haven't done anything really there. Factorize out the minus 2, but only from the beginning. So that'll give me x squared minus 3x. Double negative, of course. Then complete the square. So never complete the square straight away. And minus 9 over 4 there, of course. Then expand the bracket. So minus 2 lots of that bracket. And then minus minus makes a plus. I don't want to write, I could write 18 over 4, but it's easier to write 9 over 2 because it's already simplified. And then there's a minus 9 on the end. I'm going to write that as minus 18 over 2 because then I'll be able to collect the fractions. And so altogether, that's my answer there. Good. Right, so what I want to do today is work on some graph sketching and using not only the things that we knew already, but also using completing the square to get our sketch. Because when we're doing a sketch, we know that the shape of the graph is a U shape. So that's one useful fact to start with. The second thing we know is the y-intercept, which is when x equals 0, is what you get by putting 0 in there. And when you put 0 in there, there's nothing left there. You just end up with 8, don't you? So the y-intercept is going to be 0, 8. But at this point, I don't know whether the graph, I know it's a U shape, and I know it goes through the point 0, 8, but maybe it does this, if that's 8, maybe it does that, or maybe it's over here. It's just not enough information, and so I can't really draw my graph yet. But what I can do here, and you need to watch this really carefully because this is the new bit of learning, is I can complete the square on that. So let's do that. So y is equal to x minus 2 squared minus 4 plus 8, is what we've seen already. X minus 2 squared plus 4. Right. So this is really useful because we've got two parts of the quadratic now. We've just got this bit here, something in a bracket which is being squared, and then we're adding 4 to it. Now the concept here is that whatever this bracket is, once you square it, it's going to have to be at least 0, because when you square something, it can't be negative. So for example, if the bracket, I wonder what happens if x is equal to minus 1, the bracket then will be minus 1 minus 2 squared, which will be minus 3 squared, which will be 9. Actually, the lowest value you can ever make that bracket is 0. And you make the bracket 0. I'm going to write it down. The bracket is equal to 0 if x equals 2. And that's reasonably obvious because 2 minus 2 is nothing. When the bracket is 0, you square it and it's still 0. There's nothing left. And that leaves you with y equals 4. That's really useful because that is your minimum point. So when I come to draw this graph again now, I've got extra information. I know that the minimum point is at x equals 2, y equals 4. And so I can draw my U shape in, going through that minimum point, going through 8, and I know it's in the right place. So this is the learning I want you to take from this lesson. So you've seen that one there. We're going to write some notes on this in a moment, so don't worry about that right now. See if you can do the same again for this question. And pause the graph here, and then of course I will go through the question myself. Okay. So let's consider those steps again. So number one, the shape. Well, it's a quadratic still, so the shape is a U shape. Number two, the y-intercept. When x is 0, y is minus 15 in this case. Number three, I'm going to complete the square. Minus 36 minus 15. So that makes minus 51. And then remember what we did? We looked at this bracket and we said bracket equals 0, which is what we want, it's the lowest value the bracket can be, when x is equal to, well, in this case, it will be 6, won't it? Because 6 minus 6 is 0. And that will mean that goes away, because it's 0, and you'll be left with y equals minus 51. And then you can sketch the graph. You should always draw your axes with a ruler. I don't have a ruler right here with the screen. And I've got lots of information. So when x is 6, y is minus 51. It's not to scale, it's just a sketch. And the intercept is minus 15, so I know it's negative. So something like, probably not quite like that. Something like, oh no. Let me start with it's quite hard to do it on this tablet I'm using. So it's certainly not to scale, because on my graph that's minus 15, but that's fine. It doesn't need to be to scale, it just needs to be in the right place. We've got our minimum point, that is a minimum point, and it's in the right place on the graph, it's in the bottom right hand corner. We've got the y-intercept, we've got the right shape, we've got everything we need. Right, so the next one we're going to write down as some notes in our orange book. So could you please turn to your orange book, get the orange book out, and you don't need a new title because we're continuing from the previous work on completing the square. Just a subheading with application and then the question here. I'm going to do it slightly differently to the way I've written it here. So I'm going to actually just delete that. And we're going to write this out and then we're going to answer it. So we want to sketch the graph. And so for the sketch, useful things for the sketch are, one, what is the shape? And the shape is a U shape because it's a quadratic. And a quadratic is always a U shape, unless it's negative, and then it's an N shape, of course. Then we can find the y-intercept. So that is when x equals 0. And I can see here that's going to be 0, 11. Then we can complete the square. Group the terms. And then I can do this thing where I say, okay, well, let's look at this bracket. And I can say, well, the bracket equals 0, which is what I want, when in this case, when x equals 4. And if I put x equals 4, that gets rid of the bracket because 0 squared is 0, and I get left with y is minus 5. So then I can come to drawing some axes. I use a ruler for these notes. And the point 4 minus 5 is, say, here. So that's the point 4 minus 5. And I'm going to just draw my quadratic in, bearing in mind that the y-intercept is positive. So when I draw it in, I need to make sure, that's not very good. I need to make sure the y-intercept is positive and not negative. There we go. And then I'll label that 11. I'll just check that out there. Yeah. So that's what you need for these sketches. We want to get the y-intercept in, we want to get the shape in, we want to get the minimum point in. So I'm going to just whiz through a few of these because I didn't write those points down. So we're going to leave that one, and we're going to take just the point. We're not going to worry about the extra bit on the bottom there, and I'll come back to that next lesson. This is what I'd like to do in the front of your blue book here. No, don't want to do that. I would like you to answer these 5 questions, please. And then come back and I will go through them and check how we've got on. I'm going to do 1 per page. I just see what it's copied the pages there. Right, so number 1. So I know I've got the shape. I'm going to be a bit briefer. They've got the shape. I've got the intercept. I'm going to complete the square. And I'm going to draw it in. Oh, hang on, I need to just... So from this, the minimum point, so just being a bit briefer with what I've learned so far, the bracket will be 0 when x is -4. And when that bracket's gone, I get left with y is -4. So my minimum point is over here, -4, -4. And I've got the shape. And my intersect is positive, so it needs to be above the axis. My intercept is at 12. So there is number 1, numero uno. Number 2. Okay, so I've got the shape is a U shape, it's a quadratic. The intercept is x is 0, y is -5. Let's complete the square. Minus the 25 and minus the 5. And that will give my minimum point. Well, I'll have x will be -5 to make the bracket 0. And once the bracket's gone, y will be -30. So my graph, -5, -30 is over here somewhere. And the y-intercept is negative. So my U-shape coming through, negative y-intercept. Hopefully you're picking up on these key points. Is the y-intercept positive or negative is the key section I keep coming back to. Number 3, so I've got another U-shape. My y-intercept is 0, 1. I'm going to complete the square slightly. Oh, I'm looking at number 4. Change that, sorry. It's not 0, 1, it's 0, -4. Complete the square. X -6 squared -36 -4. So I'm just speeding up a bit where we're getting the hang of it. So the minimum point, of course, will be when x is 6, makes the bracket 0, y is -40. And so not a very good set of axes. Drawing it in, but I'm drawing it, it looks like I'm just drawing it, but as I've been drawing it, I've been thinking the minimum point's over here this is the right section of the graph, and the intercept is negative. So I was thinking when I was drawing it, is the intersect negative? And yes, it is. Number 4. So this one, I've got the same shape. They're all a U shape. I've got the intercept of 0, 1, and then I can complete the square. A bit harder with a fraction. I've got -9/4, and then I've got +1. I'm going to write +4/4, easier to group together. So that'd be -5/4. And then that's going to be the minimum point on that one is going to be, well, when the bracket, x will be -3/2 to make it bracket 0. When the bracket's gone, I'll be left with y is -5/4. So I've got a positive intercept, negative minimum point. So I've got positive intercept, -3/2, -5/4. Good, right. So flying through really, I've got one left to do. Okay, number 5. Bit harder. I've got the U shape. I've got the intercept of 0, -3. That was easy, but then not so easy. I've got to complete the square. I've got the 2 at the front, not very convenient. And it's not equal to 0, so I can't divide it. So I'm going to go through those stages, factorize out the 2, just leave the -3 there. X squared plus 5/2x. Complete the square on the second step, never the first step. x plus 5 over 4 squared minus 25 over 16 minus 3. Expand the bracket out, so I've got two lots of that bracket. I've got minus 25 over 8. If you times that, you get minus 50 over 16, but 50 over 16 is 25 over 8. And I'm going to adapt that 3, and I'm going to make it minus 24 over 8. Just easier to collect the terms. So this one really is a bit harder. Collect those, I've got minus 49 over 8. Right, so now I get my minimum points. It's exactly the same process. This 2 really doesn't make any difference because you still make the bracket 0 by making x 5 over 4. And once you made the bracket 0, it squares to 0, and it doesn't make any difference that there's a 2 here, because when you times 0 by 2, it doesn't make any difference. And you're still left with y is minus 49 over 8. So we've got a negative intercept, we've got a negative point. And so I'm going to draw that in. Something like that. That's the point minus 3. And that's the point minus 5 over 4 minus 49 over 8. Lovely. So as ever, please, evidence of all the work that we've done there. Next lesson will be on Wednesday. And you know, of course, that the test is coming on Thursday, which I said at the start of the recording. Thanks very much.